All right, after some technical difficulties, we are back with episode 2 with Mr. Paul Oneid. He's a guy that I heard a lot about and got in contact with him. Made it over to his gym on a very hungover Sunday, so I didn't get much training in with him. But he's definitely a extremely smart guy and definitely has a great outlook on training and movement patterns, etc. I'm not going to talk about too much about him. I will let him take care of that. So take it away.
Hey guys, so I am Paul Oneid, as Cam mentioned. I do lift a bit of weights. I work here in Ottawa, Ontario as a functional rehabilitation specialist for Manulife. So basically that's a fancy way of saying that I'm a subject matter expert in all things rehab for people who are trying to go back to work. As far as competitions go, I compete mainly in the 220, 242 weight class. To date, I've only competed raw with wraps. Best lifts are an 805 squat, 430 bench press, and a 725 deadlift. And those were done at 242. My best total by Wilks is actually at 220. I totaled 1930 at 220. My squat and total at 220 are still top 20 all time. And I'll be competing next December 10th in sleeves for the first time, and if I hit my goal, when I hit my goal, I'll be top 5 all time in sleeves there. Other stuff I do some online coaching. Currently have about 26 clients. I own a high-tech company with a good friend of mine, Jay Nira, and we're working on launching a mobile app, and been doing some seminars and some consulting as well. So staying busy and training hard.
Do you also want to give a quick recap of your strength coach history? I didn't realize it was as extensive as it was, and it's very impressive.
Yeah, sure. So I got my bachelor's degree from Ottawa U in human kinetics. From there, I accepted an internship position at the University of South Florida and worked my way up to a part-time assistant. While I was there, I did a master's in exercise science. From there, I got a full-time job at Robert Morris University as an assistant strength coach. Then I moved back to Tampa to work at the University of Tampa, which is a Division II school. I worked there while I finished my master's. In all, I have 2 master's degrees, one in exercise science and one in sports management. Then I went to Queen's University in Kingston, and I was their head strength and conditioning coach for about 8 or 9 months before the career change.
So as a guy that's kind of been in the strength game, if that's what you want to call it, for so long, when did you start lifting, and how were you introduced to it?
So I started lifting this summer from high school to university. I was a pretty fat kid in high school, and I just wanted to meet girls. So I wanted to get super jacked. So I actually lost 60 pounds that summer, and trained twice a day, worked in a warehouse, and basically didn't eat. So I was like manorexic. That was my introduction to training. From there, I actually played basketball a little bit as a freshman or first year at Ottawa U. Decided to change, started playing football, so devoted more of my time to lifting heavy. And then I actually had knee surgery in university, and training after that made me realize training is what I want to be doing. I want to learn more about this, which led me to the internship. And as far as powerlifting goes, I mean, before I even started powerlifting, I was pretty strong. I think I had bench pressed over 315. I'd squatted over 500, before even training for powerlifting. And that was under 200 pounds. And then when I really started powerlifting, I was working at South Florida, and the coach said something to me that really hit home. And he said, you need something to set you apart. You need something to gain credibility. Your athletes aren't going to give a shit what you want them to do unless they know that you expect the same things from yourself as you do from them. So I was like, well, fuck, I'm going to compete because I know I can do well. And when they see that I'm competing and I'm asking them to do things that I do myself, I'll immediately get credibility. And that's kind of how it stuck.
Fair enough. Definitely makes sense. So is that kind of that rehab type process, that's kind of what turned you on to, I could make a
Yeah.
career out of this kind of thing? Like, this is
Oh,
something
it's
I
more
want to.
so just like I just need to know more about this because it's
Oh,
really cool. Like I could see how, little changes to my movements had such a profound effect on the outcomes, and it was just really cool for me to see how that worked. And I was pretty lucky. Like I was surrounded by some smart people. Like my boss at the time was a Charles Poliquin guy, and he kind of led me in the right direction. And then from there, I just started reading on my own and found my own philosophy per se, which is still changing. I mean,
yeah,
as it
it's
always
just
is.
kind of always adding to it and
Exactly.
tweaking things and here and there. So the
Mhm.
real question about all of that is, after that summer of the 60-pound weight loss, did you meet any girls?
I
Or was it
did.
all for nothing?
I
Oh,
did.
right on. Paid off.
The first girl that I went after, I ended up dating her for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. So as soon as it's like you get a car and then you immediately drive it as fast as you can. So that's what I did. And then
Oh,
that ended, and I realized that things were better than they seemed.
at least it all worked out in the end.
Hey man, if the goal was getting a girl, I got a girl. So, and she, you know what? She was pretty good. She was a great person. Um, she'll definitely never listen to this podcast because she's going to fuck about training. But she's a good person. She's not one of those, like, of all the women that I've dated, I would still say hi to her on the street.
Wow. It's always that first. Well, I don't know if it was the first one, but that first one that you really took the effort to get to. Got to
Oh
keep
yeah,
that,
yeah,
that
for sure,
special spot.
for sure.
Talking about how you've learned quite a bit and with your rehab and whatever, someone who seems to take great care and like proper motor patterns, corrective exercises, etc. Like just talking to you, I could tell you really put an emphasis on that. Do you like? Are there any like fads / movements you've seen either recently, past couple years, maybe that are like overrated, that are getting like blown up online through social
Overrated.
media?
I would say corrective exercise in itself has become overrated. I don't know how I became this like movement guru or whatever. I do have a pretty good understanding of biomechanics, so I guess that's where I get it from. And I think I credit my education a lot for the ability I have to look at things differently. So I don't necessarily look at a pattern the same way anyone else would. And because I've had so many influences from different schools of thought, I have a pretty big toolbox. If all you have is a hammer, everything you look at's a nail. But if I have, a lot of different tools in my toolbox, no matter what comes in front of me, I can address it. As far as the fad of corrective exercise, like, yes, I warm up for a really long time before I lift, but that's probably more mental than anything for me because I've had both knees operated on, and I like warming up, and I feel like if I'm warmed up and ready to lift, then I'm going to have a good session. Some guys can just jump under the bar, and that's great. Do I think that's optimal? No, but if it works for them, it works for them. Corrective exercise is overused. Most people don't need corrective exercise. I would say that most people try to major in the minor, and I'll credit that one to Todd Hammer. That's his expression, and it refers to trying to refine the finer details when the big picture is out of order. So if you squat like shit, but do a ton of corrective exercise, it doesn't really matter. You're still going to be in pain because the heavily loaded movement looks like shit. So I'd much rather address the movement of the squat, make sure that looks semi-okay, and then look at, okay, what do we need to do for corrective exercise? I give all my clients a general warm-up. Has a couple correctives in there simply for like hip external rotation, things that extension and external rotation, shoulder external rotation, things that are limited based on lifestyle. Like
Mm-hmm.
most people have internally rotated shoulders and tight hip flexors. So I give a bit of corrective exercise to address that. But most of my energy with my clients is spent addressing their patterns, so that if the pattern looks good and they still have pain or they still have dysfunction, then at least we know where to look. You know, so I think the corrective exercise realm is a fad in itself. I think it's overused, it's overhyped, and it's overmarketed.
So it's more like don't sweat the small things when like the big picture is the main issue. Yeah,
It's
I
like
get what you mean.
I had a client today, we were talking about diet, so a bit unrelated, but he's saying like, how close should I eat to bedtime? And I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean? It doesn't matter. And he's like, well, I've been having trouble sleeping. And I'm like, okay, how many nights a week are you bouncing? And he's like, oh, like once or twice. Okay, so you have an erratic sleep schedule and you're wondering if eating better is going to help your sleep schedule. No, not having an erratic sleep schedule is going to help your sleep schedule. So if for him, bouncing is not absolutely necessary. So I told him to cut it out, especially because he's getting into meat prep. But that's majoring the minor. It might make a difference what time he eats if it helps him sleep. But I think not bouncing 2 nights a week and staying up till 4 a.m. will do a much better service to his sleep patterns than that.
Yeah, someone that's got an absolute crap sleep schedule because of work, I definitely know the feeling of what you mean. So again, trying to stay on this train of thought here. We were talking about one of your clients. So although like everyone's different in terms of either the big three, like you said, shoulder, internal rotation, and the hips and whatnot, what's like one thing you kind of preach to everyone in like a general aspect without getting too specific per person, if you kind of have one?
For sure. The biggest thing I see in all my clients is the inability to stabilize the midsection under load. So if you look at the body, it should be very, very stable in the middle and mobile in the extremities. So we preach proximal stability and distal mobility. So anytime, this might get pretty specific. So think of the body joint by joint. It's arranged in an alternating fashion between mobile and stable joints. So just take the arm. You have a mobile hand and wrist, you have a stable elbow, and you have a mobile shoulder. So if I take mobility away from one of those areas that are supposed to be mobile, it has to come from somewhere. And that's exactly what happens with the torso. So we want to keep our spine nice and neutral. We want to keep it stable. But if we're loaded and we aren't able to do that, we're going to get movement in the spine that we're not supposed to have. So the bar isn't going to be where it's supposed to be for us to apply force to it. So teaching the athletes how to arrange their bodies and cue them to stabilize the midsection under load is something that I preach to absolutely everyone, because immediately when they can do that, their lifts skyrocket.
That's actually something I've tried to look into for my training after this meet is I've like completely ditched all belt work for a couple weeks just so I can really practice on bracing that midsection, because it is a glaring weakness in definitely my squat and deadlift for sure. So it's just kind of something to try something different. So definitely nice to see that.
If you're competing single ply, that's going to be the biggest difference for you, because if you can't stabilize your midsection, you can't push into the gear.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing. You see these, let's look at like the 198 to 242, like geared lifters. They're all built like brick shithouses with huge midsections. Huge midsections and huge upper backs. Why? Stability. You look at a guy like Brian Carroll, he's 4 feet thick.
Yeah.
With abs. You know what I mean? So he's been a big influence on that for me. And you know, the McGill Big Three, the Bird Dog, Rolling Plank, and McGill Crunch, those are something that every single one of my athletes does every single day, training or non-training. Well, they might not do it, but it's prescribed for them. So all 3 of those cue torso stability, bracing, things like that. Also learning how to breathe too. That's really important.
Talking about Brian, does he do your programming for you? Like, is he your
No,
coach? Okay.
no.
I wasn't sure about that.
I work with Jonathan Bird actually. So
Okay.
Bird is Brian's training partner.
Mhm.
John squatted over 1,000 in 3 different weight classes. He's trained, I think, including me, I think it's 6 800-pound raw squatters and 3 900-pound raw squatters. So he's trained some big squats. He's total over 2,500 a few times in year, in a couple different weight classes. He should be, he's competing on Saturday, and he should beat Steve Goggins' total. So he's a very accomplished lifter and coach himself, and he and I have a really good thing going. He listens to me, obviously, because I know some like what works for me and stuff like that, but he does a really good job of reining me in, because I tend to do too much because I love training so much.
Mhm.
So he kind of calms me down and gives me a little bit of tunnel vision, which I need.
Did he also have a nasty no-handed 900 squat, or am I just confusing him with someone else?
No, the no-handed squat was Mikhail Kuklayev.
I didn't think he was a Russian. I thought it was Bert. Maybe I'm confused. Yeah, I
Oh,
must be
that's
all.
Sam Bird.
Oh, okay.
Sam Bird. So Sam Bird is one of the OGs of powerlifting. He's the lightest person to squat 1,000 first in multiply. I think he held the world record multiply squat at 198 and 220, and at one point he held it in wraps and in sleeves at 220 and 242. He squatted 915 in wraps raw at 220. That's the current all-time world record. And he trained notoriously light. Always trained light. He trained what's called compensatory acceleration training, or CAT training. So he would do 5 sets of 5 at 60%, trying to escalate the density of the training session. And then anyway, that's probably another conversation, but he trained notoriously light. He'd go heavy every 4th week, and then do a calculation of what that heavy week would equate to in a 1-rep max, and then he would do that at his 3rd attempt.
Man, that's just, I didn't like. I remember seeing that video. I don't know how long ago. I didn't realize it was that much
Nasty. Every squat he does looks
oh,
the exact same.
which is something people don't realize. Like,
Oh yeah.
just out of the blue, I was listening to a Blaine Sumner, his Jug Life podcast this week, and Aida said, like, each one of your squats looks like it's on a Smith machine, because he could just work that motor pattern. People don't realize, like, consistency, not just in terms of like how many times you're going to do it, but like if it's looking the same each time, is I think something people miss a lot nowadays.
That plays a huge role in a lot of factors, because so one, you look at motor pattern memory. So if you in training, we want a specific adaptation to impose demands, right? So the SAID principle. If each one of your squats looks the same, you're not going to get as strong as if each one of your squats looks the exact same, because it's like you're driving through a field, okay? So if you drive through the same wheel path every single time, eventually all the grass will go away. It'll turn to rock, and then eventually they'll put a road down there. If you're always driving left, right, all around the place, no one's going to want to put a road down there, because you're just ruining a field. So ingraining that movement pattern so that every single one of your squats looks the exact same is really important. I call it intent. So instead of just moving the weight just to move it, move the weight to try and get better. A set of 3 at 80%, or a set of 3 at 80% that looks the same, it's going to have 2 separate outcomes when it comes to a maximal attempt. That's one of the reasons why beginners can rep out these high percentages with super high volumes. Like, you'll see guys, squat at 80% for 11 reps. Well, it's because it's not your 80%, because each one of your reps looks different. So and then you get guys like me, my 80%, if I got 6 or 7 reps at 80%, I'd be the fucking happiest dude in the world. I'd also be borderline dead, but like, that'd be insane. because
Yeah,
my
it's just
80% is actually my 80%.
mhm. People like nowadays it's like go in, you max out in the gym, and like that's your one rep. That's where your percentages are coming from, no matter what that lift look like, whether it's a
Yeah,
deadlift, you hitch the crap out of it, all that. That's you taking your percentage off. Like it
yeah.
just seems like people they're trying to toot their own horn and have a dick measuring contest every time you step in the gym, where it's like
Well,
you're not going to get better.
it's Instagram, right? You want
Yeah,
followers, and I probably have the most boring Instagram ever. It's just my dogs.
yeah, that's what makes it great.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's just like me lifting moderate weights, my dogs, and sometimes Pam if she doesn't get mad at me.
I will put his Instagram down in the bio so you guys can check out the dogs, because I highly recommend that.
They're,
Um,
they're they're sitting around me right now.
what kind of approach to training do you take personally, and does that differ when you're programming for your athletes? Like I know it's kind of like it's opening a can of worms. Like I mean, like
No,
some
no,
guys will
no.
take an RPE type approach or like a percent, like
So it
just kind of
varies. It
like
varies. So for
yeah,
me, in the
okay,
off season, it's all RPE. It's RPE for a couple of reasons. One, I like a lot of a variety in the off season. So like if I'm having a client or myself do, a set of 5, and I want it to be a moderate intensity, but they're doing like a buffalo bar bench press. I don't know what their 1 rep max buffalo bar bench press is going to be. I could probably estimate it. Like if in my mind I'm thinking, right, it would probably be around like between 90 and 95% of their max, because it's only about a 1-inch deficit, so it wouldn't be too bad. So if I program moderate work off of a 95% max, I probably could hit the nail on the head. But I don't know if they're feeling great that day. I don't know if they've been stressed. That's why I really like the RPE, because in the off season, training shouldn't be your priority. In that personal philosophy has changed over the years, because I used to be this like incredibly unbalanced individual. So for now, like my off seasons, that's how I've been able to do the coaching and the seminars and the app. Like training is what I do. It's not my life. It's my release. I like it, but it's there. The other places is where I'm going to make my money, make my career, and things of that nature. Build my relationship with my fiance. That being said, I am afforded a little bit more freedom in that regard, because my fiance is as unbalanced as I am. For those who don't know, she's a regionals level CrossFit athlete. So she trains 8 times a week. But so anyway, back to the RPE. So off season is all RPE, usually between 6s and 8s. I'll never go higher than 8s in the off season, usually around 7. Typically for 5s, I will go down to 3s sometimes with the clients, depending on who it is. If it's a younger person, I might go down to 3s at 8 during the off season, simply because I find they can respond better a little to heavy weights, and mentally they might need it. If you're a more advanced lifter like myself, I don't need to lift heavy in the off season to be able to lift heavy in a meet prep. That's just not at all. When I'm prepping for a meet, it's all percentages. Reason being, that's my focus. That's my goal. I have to hit certain numbers in the gym to be able to hit them on the platform. So if you show up in an off-season workout and you're programmed a 5x5 at 7 and you feel like shit, okay, take a lighter day, because your 7's not going to be very heavy. If you show up to a meet prep and you got doubles at 85%, well, motherfucker, you're doing doubles at 85% because it has to get done. That's the shift in mind frame that I have. That's the shift I try to get with my clients. In the meet prep too, like it's specific. Our main lifts are the squat, the bench, and the deadlift. There's very little variety. The accessory work, we might throw some specialty bars in there, some blocks on the deadlift, maybe some accommodating resistance, but we're trying to keep quite specific to the competition lifts. And in the off season, I like a lot of variety. I like throwing variables in there, seeing how people respond, working on weak points, and that's the focus.
That actually answered what was going to be one of my next questions. I was going to ask you about your feelings towards specialty bars and exercises, and
Great, great.
yeah.
I don't squat with a straight bar for my whole off season.
Mhm.
Reason being, the way I rack the bar on my back and like my hand position kind of beats up my elbows a little bit. And I've been trying to bring up my bench press. So the specialty bars take the strain off my elbows and shoulders, mainly the safety bar. Plus it works on one of my weak points in the squat, which is, tipping forward. It's trying to get my back stronger. Specialty bars have their place. They need to be implemented appropriately. And if you're a less experienced lifter, throwing in the main movement every once in a while is a good idea. So what I'll have people do is, if they're doing, a 2 up, 1 down, so a 2 training, 1 deload, the deload week, their technique work will be with the competition lift, but the 2 weeks of training will be with the non-competition variable. If they're trying to get used to knee wraps, their 2 training weeks will be, those lift variants, and then the deload week, they'll actually do their deload week in wraps.
Okay.
To try and get used to them. So there's just some different ways that you can mix it up and kind of grease the groove, so to speak, and keep it fresh, but still stay away from too much specificity that far out.
Speaking of that, also, how often do you sprinkle in deloads for your clients, and how often do you deload yourself?
I deload every 3rd week. I used to deload every 4th week, and I was okay. The thought behind the deload week for me is I want to be ahead of the recovery curve. I don't want to wait until I need something before I get it, because to me, I don't think that you can decay 3 weeks of fatigue in 1 week. So over time, you're still digging your hole. You're just digging. So think of it as digging a hole. So if I dig a hole for 2 weeks and then fill it for 1 week, I'll fill most of the hole. If I dig my hole for 3 weeks and then fill it for 1, I won't get as much filled. So it's much easier to stay ahead of the recovery curve by deloading before I need to. The other thing that I validated scientifically is I'm a very neurologically efficient lifter. I'm very fast. So I'm very CNS dominant. The central nervous system needs recovery. It fatigues very easily. So more deloads means better recovery. And I've noticed that the speed of my movements has been very consistent week to week. Whereas before it would really, really degrade in that 3rd, 4th week prior to the deload.
So in terms of is there a percentage drop that you take per deload, or is it?
I'll usually keep the volume of my accessories high. So like all my single joint bodybuilding movements, those types of things high. I'll cut out the secondary barbell exercise that I do. And then the main lift is around 50 to 65% for singles, and I just work on technique. A lot of people will factor in, they'll be like, all right, well, you need a 50% drop in volume and a 20% drop in intensity. I don't think it's that complicated. I think people make it more complicated than it is. I use it as a technique week. I use it as a week to relax and get my mind right so that I can hit training hard the next week. I'd much rather be on the more conservative side than toe the line.
Yeah, you much rather be well rested going into
that
meet than push all the way through and then feel like absolute garbage the week before.
Oh, and I've done it all, man. I trained it. I did one meet where I squatted and bench pressed above 80% for 6 straight weeks. Didn't deload, then started tapering up 5% each week and competed. Did it work?
How'd that go?
I hit a really big total, but I felt like garbage, and I ended up tearing my meniscus and not even knowing. So could it work? Probably. Would it work long term? Absolutely not. Everything works. I will be the first to say everything works. Nothing works forever. And I've found a way to, slowly improve over time, make significant improvements to the areas that I need to, stay ahead of my recovery, and I'm relatively healthy. Like with the exception of this little neck thing I have going on from when I dropped the bar on it, I'm doing pretty good.
How did you drop a bar in your neck?
There's a video from last fall where I dumped an 805 squat over my head.
Oof.
It's pretty gnarly. But yeah, so ever since then I've had a little bit of a neck thing, but it's getting better.
Man, like was that training or was that in comp?
I've done it in comp, but that was in training.
Oh.
Yeah, I dumped 835 over my head in a competition. That was fun.
So for people that don't know, you're from Ottawa. You're currently training at Dynamo Barbell Club with Jay Neera, as you mentioned earlier. And again, if you guys don't know him either, highly recommend Instagram, YouTube, whatnot.
Use Google, and you're welcome.
So how has being at a place like that like affected not just your training, but like also your coaching perspective
so if you look at the guys who've run through Dynamo, you got Jay Neera, who's been the top lifter in the world at one point, Cade Weber, who's been the top lifter in the world at one point, Willie Albert, who's been the top lifter in the world at one point. There's been 10 700-pound deadlifts in our gym. Currently we have 5 guys who have wilked over 500. The amount of people who've come in there and achieved something significant is really high. And to be in there, you know that mediocrity will not be accepted. It is not a health club. It's not a gym. It's a barbell club. Everyone in there is in there to try and get better. If you're a guest, you're a guest. You don't get to pick your music. You don't get your first choice of equipment. You show up and you're a guest. If you want to be a member, you have to earn your keep. And it's that atmosphere that I believe has led to a lot of the successes that I've had. Unfortunately, Jay's been pretty injured the last couple of years, so we haven't been able to train together as much as I would have liked. Cade's taken some time off, but I think he's going to get back to training here in the next couple months. And Willie's moved on to Toronto. So I train mostly by myself, or I'll invite some clients to come train with me. But being in a place where you're not the best is really important. Not to throw an inside joke in here, but I mean, if you want to swim with little fish in a pond.
Oh, I was gonna bring this up later too, so don't worry, we're throwing it in.
If you want to swim and be the biggest fish in the tiny pond, you are not going to be successful long term. You want to go and swim with the biggest, baddest people that you can get. And that's how you get better. Look at Westside Barbell. Look at Samson. Look at the huge gyms that they have in the States. You know, the guys that are coming out of Hybrid in New York. You got 3 huge lifters there. You got guys, Super Training Gyms had massive amounts of people come through there. Juggernauts having some crazy people come through there. Whenever you have a lot of strong people surrounding each other, look at how incredible the results get. It's almost like you can say, oh, well, 5 of these guys are super strong right now. I bet in a year, all 5 of them will have made ridiculous progress. And you'll be bang on every single time.
Well, yeah, it's very easy going to the gym and do your thing, post on Instagram, feel good about yourself when you're the only one at the gym doing that. Whereas if you go anywhere else and there's, say, 3 other lifters that are anywhere close to you or better, it's going to take a big old hit to the ego if you're not prepared for that. And most people need that kind of smack to the face to.
And as far as coaching goes, Jay is an incredible coach. He's very analytical. He has a great eye for it. And he's the first one who really brought my attention to submaximal lifting. So when I first got in there, I was pretty West Side. Like I do like a max effort day and a dynamic effort day and things like that. And he let me do my own thing for a while. And then finally he was like, hey man, like you want to try something that I put together? And I was like, sure. And I was lifting light and I was like, what the fuck's going on? And then I hit a huge total. I was like, oh, maybe there's some merit to this. And I started researching it on my own and putting my own little twist on it and things like that. So I do credit Jay a lot in my development as a coach. He's been over the last 5 years, he's been a really great friend to me, and I wouldn't be the lifter or coach I am today without Jay.
Also speaking, kind of relating to that, are there any books, articles, people in particular that you would say if people are looking to get into powerlifting, expand their powerlifting knowledge, etc., to go read or research themselves? Are there any that
I would, and I'm going to rant a little bit here.
Go ahead.
As far as books go, I think people should read books containing scientific principles. I don't think people should read books that contain programs. The reason being, you take 531, you take the Juggernaut method, you take 10-20 Life, you take insert any name, the West Side Barbell method. All those people read the same books. Their programs are their interpretation of that knowledge. I would much rather advocate that people read the books that these individuals who made the programs read, so that one, they can understand the programs better, and two, they can assimilate the knowledge within their own web of philosophy. There are some like Brian Carroll is my sponsor. I write for his website. I follow his training philosophy. There are things that I do in my training with my clients that do not align directly with his. I don't follow his program explicitly as is written in the book. Neither does Bird when he writes my program. What we do is we adhere by certain principles, certain philosophies. The more tools you have in your toolbox, the better. If all you know is the programs as they're written, you don't know how to manipulate them to take into account the variables, because you don't know what the variables are. All it is numbers on a piece of paper. Science and Practice of Strength and Strength Training. I think I have it over here somewhere. Yeah, Science and Practice of Strength Training by Vladimir Zatsorsky. Periodization by Tudor Bompa. Super Training by Dr. Mel Siff. Pretty much any one I have here. I got Block Training by Vladimir Isharin. I got a bunch of books here. Shout out my library. But yeah, so I mean, books over articles for sure. The more books you can read, the better. And strive to get to a point where you actually understand what's being put on the paper. Like, not to throw like some guys under the bus, but I mean, if you've only learned from one person and that's all you know, you really are not equipped to be a coach. If you can't get out of your comfort zone to try and help someone get better, it's going to be really hard for you to keep clients happy. That's kind of my rant there.
Yeah, if you just keep throwing the same whatever rep scheme, exercises, etc. at the same person, the same group,
yeah,
what's going to happen? You're going to stall. It's going to be stagnant. If you're not, like you said, if you're not willing to get out of your comfort zone, what's the point?
Like these guys that, and you see it a lot, and I'm not throw the IPF under the bus, but I just see it the most there. It's like this DUP, dynamic or daily undulating periodization, where, you know, all you guys do is squat, bench, and deadlift with a few other movements in there. Well, if you're squat, benching, and deadlifting all the time, you're going to develop some pretty significant imbalances and overuse injuries. And guess what? Everyone who I talk to who trains that way always has significant imbalances and overuse injuries. If that's all your coach has in their toolbox and you're always fucked up, isn't that a bad thing? Isn't that an indication that you need to change something? But anyway. And I'm not saying my way's better. I'm just saying it's different. And there you go.
And there's some background knowledge to it. It's not just
I know some things about some stuff.
Speaking of the IPF community, why do you think there's this? I don't know if I want to call it tension or however you want to.
I don't know, man.
Like
I have an incredible amount of respect for anyone who steps on a stage and competes in front of judges. That takes an incredible amount of balls. As far as the IPF versus everyone else, I could give a shit less. I have clients that compete in the IPF. I have clients that don't. If you take drugs, if you don't take drugs, this is a sport where there's if you want to compete wearing a tutu and 7 layers of equipment with, you know, dogs and cats in your arms, you could probably find a federation. There's a federation you could deadlift with straps and bench with a slingshot.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
Like, you could compete however the fuck you want, and I have an incredible amount of respect for anyone who does compete. As far as the tension goes, if I think a lot of lessons can be learned from the IPF with how professionally their meets are run. They're very quick. They're organized. The rules are like, there's a very strict rule book in terms of equipment and things like that. And guess what? The USPA, or the IPL, which is the federation that follows as close to the rule book of the IPF as possible, is the one that everyone is choosing to compete in because it's the most legitimate. So people get on this like, oh, the IPF, the small little weak people. Well, obviously, if a 142-pound dude is competing, he's not going to look like a brick shithouse. He's going to look like, you know, your little sister. But he's still competing. He's on stage and he's doing whatever he can to succeed. There's nothing wrong with that. I think people just like giving people a hard time. And let's be honest, it is a dick measuring competition.
Talking about that too, like it's not the people that are like good either. Like it's like
No,
Joe
yeah.
Schmo from down the road, like, oh, you take drugs, you're a cheater. I'm higher on the totem pole than you. All this crap, like, man,
Yeah,
we're
it's
all
never
just
the top
lifting
level
weights.
guys. Yeah, it's
like,
lifting weights. It's not like, this isn't like an eye into the political landscape of the world. Like, this is lifting weights wearing a fucking singlet.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the least manly thing you could be wearing in a group full of dudes that are all sweating.
Oh, yeah.
All like, but
Nothing
oh no,
like a room full of aggression, protein farts, and A535. That's what a powerlifting smells like.
And that's different to be said for people that decide to cross over federations when they have no business being there.
I will say this, you know, there is somewhere to compete for everyone. So if you're a cheater, like if you're going to go and try and pass a drug test and compete while using PEDs in a drug tested federation, you're just a piece of shit. Plain and simple. Like, if you wanted to use drugs, just go compete somewhere else. It's not like, look at it this way. If I'm an NFL player, okay, PEDs are illegal for me. But I know for a fact that if I don't use PEDs, I can't feed my family. That's a little bit different than someone using PEDs to win a national championship in powerlifting. You know what I mean?
Powerlifting's hardcore, man.
It's pretty
sacrifice
badass.
to win.
5%, dog. Oh, sorry. Too soon?
Too soon.
Too soon? Whatever it takes.
On to the, that's good, that one. Two more actual questions. We'll hit a quick lightning round and call it a day. If you were to give young Paul one piece of advice, what would it be? Like, let's say,
stop being such an elitist, closed-minded. I used to think I knew everything, and then I had this light bulb moment, and I can remember what it was. I was sitting with my former boss, Robert Morris, who's he's been one of the biggest influences on me, not only as a coach but as a person. And he looked at me and he said, "Why are you doing this?" And I said, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Why are you a coach? Like, what do you want to accomplish?" I'm like, "I want to help people." And he's like, "You know how you help people? You care." And I was like, "Well, I do care. I want to make them better." He's like, No. You care about them as people." And I was like, oh my God. And for me, like, while that has nothing to do with, you know, the training science, it had everything to do with the training science for me, because I had devoted so much of my time to learning the X's and O's, the black and white, the sets and reps, that I forgot that there was a person attached to it. And that light bulb moment of, I need to switch gears and be able to, instead of just gather this knowledge to have this knowledge, I need to gather this knowledge in a way that I can contribute it to someone's success. And that's my philosophy has switched from, back then I would coach the exercise or coach the program. Now I coach the athlete. I've opened my mind to the point that every one of my clients that I try to work with, I try to have a good relationship with them. Like, I've had relationship talks with my clients. I've had, eating disorder talks with my clients. And if I was just an X's and O's guys like I used to be, I would have no idea how to deal with that. So that, for me, it was, if my advice to myself was just open your mind and realize that this is bigger than you.
That's another thing, like, that kind of comes into, like, I saw a quote, whatever, a couple of days ago. It's like, if your total is going on your tombstone, I don't think we're going to be friends. Like, that's not really the same situation, but, like, people aren't just a total. Like, people are people. Their totals are how they use themselves, I guess, if you want to explain it like that. So, I mean, like, I definitely like that. Right. I like that philosophy a lot. Like, the way you handle that, like, that really makes you appealing as a future hopeful coach.
Well, if it serves as a marketing strategy, that's great. But I mean, it's really true. Like, if you're just writing numbers on a piece of paper and you're not looking at who the athlete is, like, people change over time. People's needs change over time. People's lives change over time. Like, if you don't know that, your client got a new job and he's working 14 hours a day and all of a sudden his numbers start tanking, well, obviously you two need to have a conversation about what's going on.
Yeah, again, yeah. It just comes down to, again, people. It's bad with Instagram now too. Like, everyone and their mother seems to be a coach, and like, what are those people doing that makes people better? Are they just giving them the numbers? Are they actually trying to get to know them? I've been lucky enough. I've had, I'd say, like, 2 actual coaches through 2 meet preps that have, like, really taken that personal relationship to, like, the next level. And, like, I wasn't afraid to, like, tell them, oh, I wasn't feeling good this week, or I had this going on, or et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, that's totally what you need to do to, like, progress. Because, like you said, new job or, like, starting school up again, if there's, like, all that added stress coming on, training is going to may take a hit. And if that training does take that hit, then either adjust for it or figure out a different route that you can take until you're kind of all settled back in.
Absolutely.
Last big question here. Do you have the best dogs on social media?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
I totally agree with that.
They're so funny. Like, so we got Meatloaf. We got Meatloaf from a breeder 2 years. Actually, I think it was 2 years ago today. We brought him home. We picked him up.
Yeah, I saw the mirror. Video earlier.
We picked him up from Kitchener, and I mean, from day one, he was just hilarious. A huge asshole, but he's hilarious. Like, he does not listen. He's the most stubborn little dude ever. But he's the snuggliest little love bug. And then Beefcake, we adopted from, I guess, an acquaintance of a friend of ours needed to get rid of a dog. And he gave a few different reasons to a few different people. I don't actually know what the actual reason he needed to get rid of Beefcake was, but apparently this guy was a bit of a piece of shit. And when we brought Beefcake home, him and Meatloaf hit it off right away, but he was always very timid around us. He would never come and cuddle us. He wanted his distance. He would never roll over onto his back. And then over the course, it took him a good, like, 6 to 8 months to really get cuddly and, like, close to us. And now, like, if I'm on the couch, he's on the couch with me. He's laying across my lap. He sits under my desk while I'm working all day. Like, he just stares at me. He'll come with me to the bathroom. Like, both of them will sit in the bathroom with me. And they're like, they're our children. It's like living with 2 cartoon characters, to be honest.
So we'll move on to the lightning round. It's still pertaining to the dogs. Why the names Meatloaf and Beefcake? I mean, I'm not knocking them. They're great names. I'm just
Pam chose them. Okay. Pam chose Meatloaf, and then Beefcake was either going to be Beefcake or Pork Chop. Okay. So the third one's going to be Pork Chop.
Also, it's beefcakes with the tongue, right? I
Yeah.
have that. Is his tongue ever in his mouth, or is it always just stuck out there?
No, it's too big for his mouth. So like I have to make sure it doesn't dry out. So like yeah, I'll throw like coconut oil in the bottom of his bowl and make him lick it out to like keep it moist. Because it gets dry. It gets dry and crusty. And like after walks in the rain, like it'll get dirty from the dirty ground. It's really, I feel bad for the guy. I know.
Oh, man. I thought it was just kind of like, I guess it makes sense too big. I kind of just thought it was like maybe with like the way his teeth are or whatever, but it makes sense if it's too big.
It's just too big.
Man. Who's taller, you or Jay Nera?
Me.
I think me, you,
me by about an inch and a half.
Oh, you probably hold that over his head, don't you?
No, I don't, because Jay has this thing where he thinks I take up more space than him. He outweighs me. Well, actually not anymore. He outweighed me by like 20 pounds at one point, and he's like, "Oh, you take up more space than me." Now I take up more space than you, skinny guy.
Back to after the first round of this, before the technical difficulties, we were talking about Jordan.
Yeah.
For people that don't know, Jordan is the owner of Bacon and Barbells,
the shittiest clothing company in powerlifting.
So give a rundown of the showdown that was supposed to go down, and then I'll ask the question.
The showdown that never happened. So Jordan and I have been friends for a few years. Talk pretty much, a couple times a week. Gotten quite close, and he's always held it over my head that I've never competed in sleeves. So finally, I accepted his challenge to compete December 10th in sleeves. Brady even created an invitational only division for us to be able to do this. Brady put up $2,500 for us to do this. Best Wilkes wins. Obviously, there's other people involved in the invitational, but it was pretty much, me and Jordan going head to head. Jordan berated me on social media with all these memes and like insulting pictures, trying to, get under my skin. I retorted back by lifting more than his max for reps on every lift, which is all that matters. But anyway, Jordan has pulled out of the meet because I am so intimidating that he couldn't stand to lift against me. Not that he ever had a chance, but the people need Jordan, if you ever listen to this, people need to hear your reason why. Honest reason why that you could not stand to compete on the same stage as me.
This was like I said, this is the Mayweather-McGregor fight of the year. Like this was
Mayweather versus McGregor's daughter. Like this is not even like.
So my question was going to be who's the better trash talker between the two, but Jordan. You didn't do so much. You walk the walk. He talked.
I don't have to. Like, who's a better trash talker, me or Jimmy Paquette? Me. Like, I'll talk shit to Jimmy Paquette all day because the dude deadlifts over 900 pounds. What am I going to do? Jordan's best squatting competition, I think, is 635. I squatted 685 RPE 7. So I think he'll be okay. I think Jordan's thirds are less than my openers. My opener on the squat in December is going to be 672. So 40 pounds over his best squat ever.
Speaking of Jimmy, who's the actual competition on Showdown for people that are maybe curious?
I think there's going to be a few guys, to be honest. Most of us have committed to lifting in sleeves. Dylan Polo is a dude from Guelph. Very strong lifter. He totaled over 2,000 at 242 in reps. Jimmy Paquette. Jimmy squatted over 700, benched over 500, and deadlifted 900. But he's doing a World's Strongest Man event the week before, so you never know if he's going to be beat up. My client Stu Locke was going to compete, but he dropped out. He would have been close. I think Stu's going to out total me within the next 6 months. Very, very strong young man. Who else is competing? Might be some guys from the U.S. coming up, but I think it's me, Dylan, and Jimmy Paquette are going to be the main competitors.
And just for the people that go ahead.
I just have the advantage. I'm lifting lighter. They're like Dylan's a 242. I'll be going 220, and I think Jimmy's a 275 or 308.
And is it all Wilks or is it total?
Wilks. Yeah, it's Wilks.
For the people that may not know, like when you say with wraps, again, like it differs again for each person, but like how many pounds would you say you get out of wraps compared to sleeves?
It's tough for me to say because I never go heavy when I wear. So, for example, when I squatted 805, my off-season training was with the safety bar, and I only went over 500 for 3 sets in sleeves. Then as soon as I went to the straight bar, any set over 600, I wore wraps. So my best squat in wraps up until this training cycle now was 625. And I had squatted 850 in the gym. So for me to give a carryover, I don't know.
Yeah.
And then at this meet, my goal is 744. So my best squat's 805. But I know that if I can squat 744 in sleeves, I'm pushing an 850 plus squat. So I would say that I get about 100 pounds, if not a little bit more, out of reps.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's also the reason or the way in which I squat. Like I'm a narrow stance squatter and my knees track quite a bit forward. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to get more out of wraps than someone who squats with a wide stance. So I think it varies. It varies, but experience level and squat mechanics make a huge difference.
Is there kind of like an end-all be-all goal for you in terms of lifting, or is it just progression?
As long as I keep getting better and I'm still having fun. I mentioned before that I organize my training into phases, so I'll have an off season and an in season. This off season, I have a lot of goals. The Jay and I's company is going to be taking off here soon. I'd love to be able to focus on that. I still do have a full-time job. Pam and I are supposed to get married. There's a lot of things personally that I'd like to work on. I see myself competing less often, maybe once or twice a year at most. Just keep getting better, and as long as I'm having fun and healthy, I'll keep going. If it comes to a point where I'm not enjoying it anymore, I'm perfectly comfortable to step away and just keep coaching.
You're not going to switch over to CrossFit with the fiance? Give that a go?
She gave me so much shit the other day. I wish you were more athletic. Why can't you be more athletic? And like, I used to be really athletic. Like I used to be able to dunk. Like, so now I can't do those things anymore. I can still grab.
Get winded walking upstairs?
No, I don't. I go for a walk. I go for a walk every morning. I do conditioning most nights, and not most nights. Nights that I'm not training, I'll do some type of conditioning. Whether it's like going for a really long walk, or we have an Airdyne here in the condo, so I'll ride that. But I'm in relatively good shape aerobically, but I'm not fucking sprinting around throwing kettlebells and stuff like that. She likes to give me a hard time too.
Just to bust your ass a little bit.
Absolutely.
So we got one final can of worms open up here. I figured I might as well throw it in. Does the Jaws theme song play every time you walk into Dynamo? And do you have to bring your own clean water to train?
We are in the process of ordering a Brita filter for the gym. So organizing a weekly delivery of jugs to use in our filter. Currently, I am drinking the dirty water, and I think there might be something to it. It's making all of us really strong. The Jaws theme song is actually not played. It is the Finding Nemo song. From the scene where Nemo is approached by the shark. That is what plays currently.
And I mean, there's nothing wrong with drinking the dirty water. Just don't spit it back into a different fountain.
There's nothing wrong with drinking the dirty water as long as you don't test positive.
Figured I might as well throw that in there.
That's all right. If anyone gives a shit, the proposed or the purported beef between the two gyms in Ottawa is stupid and pointless. If people want to lift weights, they can lift weights however and wherever they like, and I don't care.
Yeah. Again, like I said earlier, we're all just lifting weights.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's all I have. Thanks a ton for doing this. I think we covered a lot of really good information.
Yeah,
Stuff I'm definitely going to carry over into my training and whatnot. Anything else you want to cover, plug, whatever, do your thing. I have nothing else to ask. Again, thanks. Tons of great information.
Sure. You guys can find me on Instagram and Facebook, Paul Oneid, PAULONEID. I write for PowerActStrength.com. You can find all my articles and my training log there. I'm still accepting clients for online training, even though I am heading into a meet prep. I still have some openings for clients. As for the other stuff, I've been doing more seminars lately, so if you are interested in having me come to your gym, please drop me an email or a DM on any social media. My email is actually in my social media account, so throw me a message there, and we can get to chatting.
Yeah, I'll throw that, for the people's sake, I'll throw it all in the bio, so it'll be easy to reach you. Again, highly recommend the guy. Super smart, super easy to talk to. He's also a great shit talker, so that's always fun.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks again, Paul.